morning, everyone. So glad to have you with us today as we discuss time management in projects. So by way of introduction, we know that time is money, right? So in project management, controlling the time really does help you stay within the budget for your project. And you get the most value out of the employee's time, and that needs to be used wisely to leave them with a sense of purpose, because if we leave them with nothing to do, that would then cost money. So when you tackle a project, it needs to be streamlined to ensure that these valuable resources aren't wasted. So another crucial aspect of any project is that it has a deadline. And if any of your stakeholders are like mine, you don't want to miss that. So meeting the deadline is an important metric. So controlling time throughout the project activities is vital to ensuring that the project is delivered on time. So that's why effective project time management is so important. We want to meet the deadline. We want to control time so that we stay within the budget, and we want to be respectful of the employees' time, that the employees who are assigned to the project, that their time is used wisely so that they aren't left with nothing to do, which then results in waste. So not having time efficient schedules for the project also creates other problems. So if the time isn't managed correctly, it can lead to teams that either end up rushing at the end of the project or putting in hours and hours of overtime, which also increases the cost of the project and may overrun the budget. It runs the risk of getting deliverables that aren't of acceptable quality, because as you may realize, if you're rushing towards the end, you may overlook mistakes, which then result in quality misses. And it also can lead to teams that are being burnt out from too much stress and pressure if they're being rushed or being asked to work all of these overtime hours. So you want to have a nice steady pace of work so that everyone is able to complete their tasks without having to rush, having to work exceptionally long hours, feeling that stress and being burned out. Because believe me, if you're asking that of your teammates on the project, they're going to resent you. They're not going to want to work with you again in the future. And that is not going to build the type of reputation that you want as a project manager. And it will damage your reputation. So we just don't want that. So there are 6 steps to project time management. The first is activity definition. So to begin managing time, the activities required to reach the project goals must be defined. And in project management, an activity is a section of the project that will produce some sort of deliverable. So it's a task. Each activity will have one or more necessary tasks that need to be completed in order to produce the activity deliverable. So as a project manager, you need to work with your team to identify what these activities and tasks are. The next step then is to begin sequencing those activities. So you need to map out the task dependencies. What needs to happen first and then next? So a dependency occurs when one task relies on another being completed before it can start. Now, it can also go the other way. One task may need to begin before another one can finish. So this defines the order in which the task must be completed. And using a Gantt chart will help for this sequencing. And I'll show you later what a Gantt chart is if you're not familiar with that term. So this is a type of bar chart that illustrates the project schedule and how those different activities may overlap and be dependent on one another, and how the dependencies fit into the project. The next step is to estimate the resources required. So once you've sequenced the activities, you can identify the resources that are necessary. And so this includes all of the people, the materials, the machines that are needed to complete every deliverable. So you use your Gantt chart to help spot where additional resources might be needed. So, for example, if you've got 5 different activities involved and 3 of them might overlap, you may need to employ additional resources to make sure that all of those deliverables are met. So let me give you an example. Let's say I'm building a house, and as I'm sequencing the activities, we know that the foundation has to be laid before the walls can go up, right? And we know that the walls have to go up before the roof can go on, right? Now, at some point, you have to have electrical and plumbing come in. And we don't want necessarily to have the inspector come before the electrical and plumbing is installed. So let's say that the deadline for the inspection is scheduled. I mean, we know we have a deadline. And suppose that there is a bonus that will be paid out if the house is built on time and if the inspection takes place by a certain deadline. Well, let's say that you've got your Gantt chart, you've laid out all the sequencing and the resources for this, and you're coming up close to the inspection deadline, and the walls are all up, electrical and plumbing is all in. The only thing left is the roof, and the inspection is in 2 days. Well, maybe that is a trigger for you to say, okay, I need to get additional resources, more roofers to come and finish this roof to make sure I hit my deadline so I can get that bonus. Does that make sense to everyone? Okay. All right. So then the next 3 steps of those 6 steps would be estimating your activity duration. So working with your team, you begin to estimate the time that each task or activity will take to complete. So you can do this by creating weighted averages. So find out what the industry standard time is for that activity. Get an expert opinion from your team who'll be doing the actual work, and you can use your own experience. So if the industry norm for some activity is 3 days, and your team says, oh, no, we'll get that done in 2 days, but you know from experience that this team takes 5 days for this activity, you might want to create then a weighted average. So does everyone know what a weighted average is? Yes? Okay, great. So then you would create a weighted average and then come up with a final result, let's say, of 3.5 days for that activity. So giving the team, respect for their input, but you're going to go with a weighted average of 3.5 days for this task. And that's what you would actually put in your schedule. So then that brings us to the next step, which is actually developing your project schedule. So that now that you've got all of the tasks, all of the durations, an estimate for all those durations, this is when you begin to actually plot this out with a start and an end date for each of those activities and build a schedule. So you take into account the duration of each activities, the dependencies that you've listed in your Gantt chart, and you'll begin to analyze the order of the activities and build a timeline. This is when you begin to assign resources to each of the activities and see how everything fits into the overall time frame. You may look for additional potential barriers for completing the deliverables on time. And this is where you may see potential risks and begin to figure out, how do I reallocate resources, move tasks around, and so forth, so that the project is able to be completed within the timeline. Does anyone have any questions at this point? Okay, great. So the final step is controlling your schedule. So while you plan for some change that may come up, it's likely that you may not plan for a significant change. So then, as a project manager, you need to keep your eye on the progress and put in any necessary interventions that may need to take place. So this could be things like extra resources, finding and removing any unnecessary tasks to save time. So this means that if the schedule change is needed, it'll be manageable. Any questions? Okay. So I'm going to move on then to an example of a Gantt chart. So I think that most people interested in project management are familiar with the Gantt chart. And this is actually named for Henry Gantt. It's a very common project management tool. You can see the various tasks, their durations, and their dependencies. And these are frequently used for integrated project management, and they can become quite complex, especially as multiple projects of smaller size build into the larger integrated project plan. So this is a fairly simple plan. And then another tool that we'll see is the Kanban. This is another project management tool. Now, this is an example from Trello, which is a tool, an online tool. Kylie, yes, I see you have your hand up.
Yes, quick question. So is the Gantt chart specifically meant to show like when specific tasks overlap? Um, or I'm trying to better understand,
Mhm.
that utilizing this kind of tool versus like a normal timeline.
Tell me what you mean by normal timeline. Do you mean a timeline, a linear timeline?
There, yes, correct. So this one is more like you have items that are going to be overlapping each other. So this would
Mhm.
accurately reflect, um, when you're going to be working on specific tasks. So is that the purpose of this one versus the linear timeline?
Right. In project management, hopefully you'll have in your team members are going to be working on their specific tasks simultaneously. And a linear timeline infers that only one person is going to be working at any one time, that there's going to be a linear handoff of activity. Is that your understanding?
Yes.
Okay. Um, that would be very uncommon. Now, a linear handoff, a linear timeline might be good if you were, let's say you had um, a work order, let's say, and one person fills out a portion of the form, and then they take the form and they hand it to the next person, and they fill out a portion of the form, and then it literally gets handed off from person to person to person until it's eventually completed. That would be true. But in project management, um, overall, multiple people are going to be working on tasks simultaneously. And this is where the Gantt chart shows you that those tasks are being completed by different people and or resources, and you see how maybe Bob is doing his portion of the work while Joan is doing another task, and Joan cannot start her task until Bob completes his task, or we're waiting on a machine to be ready, and so forth. But
Got it.
yes, that's what it is intended to show. Yes,
Perfect. Thank you.
of course. Now with the Kanban, this shows you the different stages or phases of a project. And I really like Trello because it's very flexible. It lets you create like this file, this phase is project resources. And then you've got questions, to-dos, pending, blocked, and done. And then with the Kanban, a card is created for a particular task, and you literally just move the card from deck to deck to deck as it progresses through the project. Um, and Trello is a very robust tool. It allows you to create all kinds of notes and add team members. It's very appealing to creative people because you can add icons and videos and colors, and you can actually add charts, and you can see, I don't know if you can really see it, but down here they've actually added a Gantt chart to this card. But it's an excellent tool, and they have a very robust free version of Trello as well. But it's just one of the many tools that's available online. So improving project management is next. So in order to improve your project management, you want to use the project management tools to visualize the time frames. So without the right tools and equipment, even the best project managers are going to fail. Luckily, there are many project management tools available to help plan every sort of project, no matter how big or small. So time tracking and management tools can be especially useful since they provide a great visual resource for you and your project team. So by using them, everyone on the team is able to see exactly where the project is at that stage and what's left to do, because that's very, very important. We want to see our progress, and we also want to understand what's left to do. We want to estimate and track time accurately. And when estimating your timeline, ensure that you include all constraints and factors that affect your progress. So adding buffer time for any unforeseen events, and remember to allow time for things like meetings and research, and keep your team members in mind. Because we're only human, and everyone is going to need time to recharge and relax, and remember to allow for breaks. And also keep in mind that it's possible that your team members could leave the project, and you might need to train up someone new. So use your project management methodology wisely. Make sure you've chosen the correct methodology for your project. As we discussed last week, there are many to choose from, and one that has a particular focus on time management is the critical path method. And this methodology determines which tasks are crucial for completing the project. So it focuses only on those tasks that are essential to complete the project. And then you can strip away any of those other tasks so that they don't affect the project deliverables. And by doing this, you can save time by focusing only on those critical tasks. So make meetings valuable, because it's easy to get caught up in a trap of endless meetings and avoid actually doing any work on the project. But a lot of meetings don't really add any value, and it's really just a waste of time. So make sure that any meetings that you do call are really needed and focused. So I would recommend focusing on risks, issues, ideas, and opportunities. And for each meeting, have and stick to an agenda and a time limit, and ensure that only the necessary people are asked to attend. Because if you send out a meeting request to a wide audience, that's just going to increase the opportunity for a lot of casual conversation and questions, and drive down the value of the meeting. And here's a tip. I use a meeting template called PAL, and that stands for Purpose, Agenda, and Logistics. And every meeting invitation that I send out includes that information. So I try to provide my meeting invitees that essential information: the purpose of the meeting, the agenda, and the logistics. And logistics would be, if it's an in-person meeting, are we meeting in a conference room? And what conference room is that? If it's a virtual meeting, is it a Teams meeting and the link to that meeting, or a Zoom meeting and the link to that meeting, and so forth? Give them the information they need to have to actually join your meeting or meet you in person. And that way you're able to ensure that people are able to attend your meetings and get the purpose of the meeting addressed. So It's also important to know that if it should arise, these meetings could overrun, and you need to make sure that everyone is in agreement on what to do afterward. Finally, stop micromanaging. And this is intended for me as well. So don't delve too far into the task details. Let your team members do their jobs. So you've selected those team members for the job, and they just need to get on with it while you concentrate on steering the project successfully. So don't get involved with doing the work as well. That's what they're for. And if a timeline is looming, don't be tempted to carry out those tasks for them. Let your teammates do that. Now, don't take your eye off the ball, even if it's briefly. This can lead to problems as well. Keep the team motivated and so that they can get their job done while you just get on with managing the project. That's your role. Any questions? Okay. All right, just to summarize, we need to use the 6 steps for effective time management in projects, and we need to manage any changes that might occur. Use the project management tools to estimate and track the timeline. Use the CPM or critical path method to prioritize the essential tasks that are necessary to reach the deadline and deliver the project objectives. Add value to your meetings and stop micromanaging. Okay, I did have one other thing. I'm going to stop sharing and then share a different screen. So we talked about the Gantt chart. I am going to show you here. This is a Microsoft project plan, and you can see it combines both the task list here along with the duration, start and end date, the predecessor, so that would be where you build in dependencies. It does also allow for providing the resource names for those assigned. And then it builds a Gantt chart as well. And so I just love Microsoft Project. This is what I use as an essential tool for my project management. And I've used it for years and years and years. It is one of the most popular tools for project managers to use for managing their projects. But like I said earlier, there are many, many, many more. And I see a question from Karen. How can project managers balance the need for flexibility with the importance of adhering to a project's timeline? So thank you, Karen. I appreciate that question. The need for flexibility. With project management, there's not a lot of flexibility around the need to deliver a project's objectives by the due date. That is the goal. Now, there is some flexibility around what tasks need to be delivered first. That can be negotiated. And that is mostly going to be conducted within the team. And it can also be negotiated with the end customer. And it can be negotiated. I mean, that would include working with the sponsors sometimes to work on that. But overall, there's in my experience, I'll say, there's not a lot of flexibility once the schedule is laid out, at least in the waterfall methodology. And a lot of it does depend on the methodology that you're using. So as we know, with the agile methodology, that is an iterative process. And so you would see more flexibility there. Does this answer your question? And feel free to come off mute and discuss this further.
No, it answered the question.
Okay. Does anyone else have any questions? Okay. All right then. All right. With that, if there are no other questions, I think that is going to conclude our class for today. I want to thank you again so much for attending. Come back next week for our class on organizing and motivating a team. And like last week, I will be sharing the presentation with you via email, and I will post this recording to the M&I University website later this week, I believe. So if you have any questions, yes.
You have another question in the chat.
Oh, thank you for letting me know. So what are some common time management mistakes? Oh, great question, Karen, in project management, and how can they be avoided or mitigated? All right. One of the most common mistakes is to underestimate the duration that a task is going to take. This is very, very common. Everyone is always over optimistic about how long a task is going to take. And so they build a schedule that is over optimistic. And they think that, oh, it's going to take 2 days to do this. And it takes 5 days. And then that compiles over a whole bunch of tasks. And what they find out is they've built a schedule that was going to take, that they've estimated will take 30 days. And what it actually takes is 90 days. And then they have to go back and explain to their sponsor and the customer why they didn't meet their deadline. And that is not a conversation that you really want to have. And another thing is that they have told the team members that, well, you're going to be released from this project in 30 days. And those team members have expected to be released, and they've signed up for other projects. And now it took 90 days. So the other project is delayed. And again, it just compounds. So that is a very common problem. And then they fail to build in buffer for changes or risks that materialized. And you have to do that because those things do happen. I would just think that and that's just a result of inexperience. And so how they can be avoided or mitigated is to know from the beginning that stuff happens. And so you'd better build in some schedule budget for this type of thing, for change and for risk. So I hope that that helps. And then Audrey, I see your hand is up as well.
Yes, in regards to the question that Karen had asked earlier about flexibility, I'm curious to know if that was in regards to building in like a buffer, like in the risk management of the project being extended beyond due to not proper planning of that duration of any one activity.
I'm sorry. Could you expand on that? It's good. I had a hard time hearing you.
Okay, so what I was saying is, am I to understand, Karen, that's what you were meaning in regards to the wanting to know about flexibility in the scheduling portion of a project because of the buffer that we should consider? Yeah. Okay. And Angela, how exactly where would you place that in your scheduling? Would it just be based at the beginning or kind of an eye on it throughout the time?
So yes, you would keep an eye on it throughout. But let's say there are some particular tasks that you know are risky. Any kind of testing would be risky. And so I would actually build in an additional task around that would be just labeled testing buffer and add some days to that. And then if you don't need that additional buffer, your schedule can just be pulled up. And then if you do need the buffer, it's there for you if it's necessary.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions or any or comments? I welcome your comments as well. Do you have any stories of your own you'd like to share?
No, I think if anything, like this really gives a good idea of, for me as like a worker, to what kind of hopefully like project flow I should be getting from leadership, because I definitely agree there's times when I'm working on something, but then I don't know who else is involved. So we could be like duplicating this like effort. So it can be a little bit frustrating. Just because we don't know what the overall project is or the overall action. So I really appreciate it, Angela. This did give really good insight on what it should be, what we should be seeing.
Great, great. I'm so glad you found some value in it. All right. Well, with that, I wish you a good day, and I look forward to seeing you next week. Please come back.
Thanks,
All right.
Angela.
Yeah, of course. Bye-bye.